All right, if you would open up your Bibles to 1 Samuel 16. While we're getting all settled in place, I'll tell you, I want to go through 18, 19, and 20 tonight. And I don't know how to gauge this class. This class might turn into 2 classes, or we might get through the whole thing tonight in one go. We'll see. But what I want to pay attention to tonight is I would like for us, if we can, to put ourselves in David's shoes. That's the big thing. It's one thing to read the text, but I want to put it in blocks and bullet points and watch, because what we're going to see is an escalation. Saul escalating the situation against David. And I don't just want to read it, I want to try and put ourselves in his shoes and feel it. Because it's going to be important, depending on how far we make it in this class, might be important on Sunday or maybe next Wednesday when we get to chapter 21. 21 is where he starts running for his life, and he goes to, the first thing that he does is he goes to the priest, and that's where he eats the bread of the presence that he's not supposed to eat. And then he runs to one of the Philistine kings, and that's where he pretends like he's crazy and mad. And both of those are, well, we'll talk about it. You might have a different opinion, but I'm going to say both of those are not good in the life of David. Those are mistakes that he made. Those are problems in his life. But before we talk about those problems, I want to see what led him to make those mistakes. And I think that there's a lot of application for us in that. Whenever things get hot and crazy, and we enter into a moment of panic, that's when we're most likely to make some serious mistakes. And so hopefully we could get ahead of that. Let's look at the problem and hopefully not make those mistakes in moments of panic. Okay, anything that we need to say church family-wise before we get started? Jonna, you just look miserable holding that baby. I'll pray for you. Oh, man. Okay. Well, Tim, welcome home. Would you mind starting us with a prayer, please? Amen. Thank you, Tim. Okay, so I'm going to put all of this up on the screen at one time. Oops. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the right chapter. PowerPoint didn't have... Do you know the thing that you'll see sometimes? It's like in the news. It's like a stock market thing. Not right now, but other times. You know that arrow? You ever see that arrow in things? I was looking for one of those arrows so that I could put it in this, because that's what this is. And before we get to our text today especially, I just can't even imagine the roller coaster that David's life is, and how something like this would just mess with a person. And we'll do this a little bit either tonight or tomorrow, Sunday. Whenever you see this roller coaster that his life is, and the way that things are just completely crazy and upside down in his life, and then you go over and you read some of the Psalms, whether they're Psalms that are directly written about this period of his life, or if they just are David saying something and you can imagine that they were this period of life, it really just causes you to look at the guy and say, good night. So look at this. Number 1, we won't read all of these, just a couple key verses as we go through. But the first one, he is anointed king. Remember, God has rejected Saul, chapter 16 and verse 13. Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. Okay, so Samuel the prophet comes to your town, says, "You're the new king," and the Spirit of God rushes upon you. Anybody know how old David was here? Any idea? What'd you say? Josephus says 10. Good. That's pretty impressive. Oh, you got it? Is it written in your Bible? A woman after my own heart. Yeah. Josephus says 10. I think if you open up your study Bible, you got something in there, or you don't know? If you look at your study Bible, most people think that Josephus is probably exaggerating, so they'll say maybe up to 15, something like that. At any point, he's a kid. He's the little one. He's out taking care of the sheep. Samuel shows up, and he says, he's anointed. You are from this day forward, in God's sight, the king of Israel. And the Spirit of God rushes upon him. Now, I don't know about you. How would 15-year-old Paul have responded to that kind of news? Okay, Paul, 15 years old. You're the king of everybody now. Put that in a 15-year-old boy's lap and see what happens. I imagine, well, I don't know. I don't know what he must have felt like. Chapter 16, the next block, verses 14 through the end of the chapter, is where Saul has these crazy fits, and they go and get David because he can play music that calms Saul down. And verses 21 through 23, this is where you get some more sense of this. David came to Saul and entered his service, and Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, "Let David remain in my service, for he's found favor in my sight." And whenever the harmful spirit from God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the harmful spirit departed from him. So little boy David is anointed unexpectedly as king by Samuel. He gets called to the king's house to live and deal with the king, and it turns out that the king likes him and elevates him, and so that David's life is on the upswing here. Everything's going great. Then in chapter 17, as always, you're welcome. If you got something you want to say, just interrupt me. Get my attention. There's no stopping point here. Just say what you need to say. Chapter 17, the very next thing that happens is the story of David, God through David defeating Goliath. That's a pretty big deal. He becomes a national hero. Chapter 18 and verses 1 through 4, he becomes best friends with the king's son. And listen to this. Listen to this. Don't just read this, but tell me what it means. 18 verse 1. As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Now listen to this. Tell me what this means. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword and his bow and his belt. What's happening there? Yes. So Jonathan is the next in line to be the king. In fact, when we get to chapter 20 and Saul is outright aggressive towards David, one of the things that he says in an outburst against Jonathan is, "Don't you know that this is your spot? You're giving your spot away." Well, that's what Jonathan is doing here. The next in line is saying to David, "You." So I don't know how much time has passed here. I don't know how old David is at this point. But life is good, right? I mean, can you even imagine? This is a story of rags to riches. Can you even imagine what this life would be like? Chapter 18 and verses 5 through 7. David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war, and this was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. So everything that David touches turns to gold, and everybody's fallen in love with him. Verse 6, as they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. So the women are singing songs about him. I don't know how old he is. Probably doesn't matter. Can you just, I'll stop here and take a breath for a second. This is, you see what we're talking about here? Like, has there ever been a more vertical climb than what David is experiencing here? Do you feel it? That's the thing that I want you to do. I want you to put yourself in his shoes. Life is good. What do you got? Any comments, thoughts before we move into the next block? So, even more so, I should probably add that to our list, right? Not only are you David and you've just experienced all of this, if you're David, surely, I mean, David is this great man of faith after God's own heart. If you're David, you look at your life and you say, and you know God has anointed you king. So you're David and you say, God has done this for me, right? Look at what God has done in my life. Now, you already went ahead and read 18, 19, and 20, so you know what's coming. And the question is, if you're David, how do you reconcile what's coming? Look at what God has done in my life. Now, look at what's about to happen. I'm gonna call this escalation, because I think that's exactly what we see happening in these blocks that we're going to read. There's common themes. This is clearly put together on purpose. But the idea is everything is like, okay, that's bad, but David doesn't even know it's bad at this point. And then that's bad, and David says, well, I mean, Saul's crazy after all, no big deal. And it escalates until David's running for his life. So we're going to watch this escalation happen. Would somebody read chapter 18 and verses 8 and 9? This is after everybody's celebrating David and all of his success and all of his victory. 8 and 9, please. Okay, what's the problem?
Jealousy.
Yeah, that's it, right? We could say, we already know. Was it back in chapter 16 and verse 14? Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a harmful spirit from the Lord tormented him. We already know that Saul's not right. There's a lot of stuff going on inside of Saul that's beyond being a bad guy. But this is him being a bad guy. He's watched David's climb to success and all of his victory, and he says, they're giving more credit and more praise to him than me. It's jealousy. What else? Yep. At some point, I meant to tell you this from the start. I'm kind of skipping over. This is just a heads up, an FYI. I'm skipping over a lot of Jonathan stuff. At some point, I don't know when, there will either be a class or a sermon where we put all the Jonathan stuff together. It's so big that it needs to be together. And I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but I will. So yeah, jealousy, suspicion. This is kind of our key verse, right? Verse 9. Saul eyed David from that day on. But here's the thing, in the parentheses. Saul is escalating, but as far as we know, David doesn't know. This is just happening. Okay, would somebody read verses 10 and 11, please?
The next day,
So, I don't know how to ask this question. How could a person just think this is normal and continue to function under these circumstances? I mean, I think it is what happened. I'm really asking, like, how do you think this happened? But just imagine, Saul's lost his mind, David's playing music to calm him down, and Saul says, I'm going to spear him. Throws a spear at him. And did you notice? Twice. So David dodges it. Saul grabs the spear and tries again. David dodges it and gets out of there. And the story just keeps on rolling. But how does this happen?
This doesn't exactly answer very much strength.
I like that picture because of escalation. It's going to keep getting worse. I like that a lot for that reason. Can you imagine, though? This is where we're trying to put ourselves in David's shoes here. Can you imagine? So, I don't know what kind of boss you work for. Can you imagine everybody just being like, well, you know, Saul's having a bad day. He's throwing spears again. You know, I don't know what this was like, but okay, good thing I didn't get speared today, but that's Saul, and that's what we have to deal with. And so still, this is an escalation, but we're not to the bad stuff yet. That's good. Oh, yeah, that's really good. I like that, Dave. Okay, let's push forward. It's a little hard to see with this first one, but the next stage is, it's very possible, it's likely, I think, that David doesn't even know that bad is happening to him at this point. In fact, it kind of seems like he might still be on the upswing here. What Saul is doing 3 times is intentionally trying to put David in harm's way so that he dies and Saul can say, problem solved, and I didn't have to do it. Everybody wins from Saul's perspective. Now, maybe you would doubt me on the first one. Somebody, would you read 18, 12, and 13?
Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but he had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. He went out and came in before the people.
Okay, the key is in the next 2 stories, but the key in this verse is so. Saul does not like David anymore, so he makes him the commander of the armies. Now, before you say, well, Ryan, that's a leap, read verses 17 through 19. And if David did not know that something was wrong up to this point, this is where the red flags start to come out. 17 and 19, please. Okay. So 2 things, right? At least you might see another one, but 2 things that I would say. At the end of verse 17, for Saul thought, let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him. So David is being put. You ever read Band of Brothers? You know the book Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose? And you get on through World War II, and Easy Company starts to say, why do we have to keep going to the front lines? How about somebody else take a turn? Do you know what I'm talking about? And so here's David. What? Saul keeps putting me in dangerous spots. And then this one is, here's my oldest daughter, rags to riches. He's been out taking care of the sheep. Now he's about ready to marry the king's daughter, which, if you remember from the David and Goliath thing, whoever defeats that person can have my daughter. That was the price. And so, okay, I'm going to marry my wife, the king's daughter. Great. And then Saul says, psych, you don't get her. This is, like, I want you to feel it. If you're David, there's a lot of crazy things that happens in all of our lives. But this is one crazy thing after the next in David's life. And it wouldn't take very long, I wouldn't think, before it starts really messing with the person.
It sounds to me like he tells his daughter, you're gonna marry David. She's all excited. She's gonna get married. She wants to get married. But really, he has no intention of her marrying David. And David's going out to be killed. But he still wants her to get married, so he offers her up to somebody else before David comes back. David comes back and didn't get killed because his fiancée married somebody else.
Yeah, what? So then, don't worry about it though, Mark. You can have my next daughter. Seriously. Look at the thing. What is the next verses? 20. We don't want to read that whole section. Would somebody just read maybe just verse 20 to get the idea. Now Saul's daughter Michal loved David. And they told Saul the thing, and the thing pleased him, and Saul thought. So here it is again. Let me give her to him, that she, one, may be a snare for him, and two, that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. So I'm going to try and, Michal, go do your job. We're going to bring David down. That didn't work. But he says in this story to David, the bride price is go and kill 100 Philistine warriors and bring me back 100 foreskins of the Philistines. That's the price for marrying my daughter. Surely he's not going to make it. He comes back with 200. I wonder, did he turn it into a necklace? I wonder about this. This is a little bit strange to picture. Maybe don't visualize this spot. But surely he's not going to make it for this. And he just keeps winning. Things keep going good. But David's life is a wreck here. I want to show you this real quick for 18. I don't know what to do with this. I'd like to have this marked in my Bible. It's a theme. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times in 18, you read, and David was successful, and God made him successful. 3 times, God was with David. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everybody loves David. 6 times the word love is found. Jonathan, Michal, all Israel and Judah, Saul's servants, everybody loves David. And then 3 times the contrast is here's David and Saul is going the opposite direction. Yeah. I really like David is increasing, Saul is decreasing, and he's winning and things are good, and Saul is just falling apart. And the thing is when you're falling apart and you're the king, you're going to tear a whole lot of stuff up on your way down, which is, we're here now. This is about ready to start. I really did not intend for this to take this long to get just through chapter 18, but I'm okay to do this because I want to see the picture. Other comments up to this point? In chapter 19 and verse 1, it's over. Let me come over here now. Look at 19 and verse 1. This is no more inside jealousy, putting David on the front lines, trying to plant his daughters in his life so that they bring him down. This is it. If you want to draw a line in your Bible and you want to mark the spot, this is the spot where David's life changes. In verse 1, Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David. So here is Saul, and it's no more inside of him. I would really like to get this done. He's talking about it. I want him dead, and we're going to make him dead. And so look at this. Look at this on the story here when you see the bullet points. First, Jonathan intervened, which I'm not entirely sure. I know there's something here, but I don't know what the thing is. But it's a bit of irony. If somebody's going to intervene and save David, the fact that it's the son of the king who's trying to kill him is extra special. And then he tries to spear David again. That's the spot. If David had a question up to this point, hey, things are getting kind of weird around here. This is the spot. Look at verses 8 through 10. Read that with me. There was war again. David went out and fought with the Philistines and struck them with a great blow so that they fled before him. Then a harmful spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing the lyre. And Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he eluded Saul so that he struck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. So David has run away, and then in verse 11, Michal comes to David and says, hey, that thing that just happened, when you leave the house in the morning, there's going to be people ready to kill you. And so this is where David's like, uh-oh. I want you to notice something. Just stick your marker in our text where we are and turn over to Psalm 59. I definitely think that if you don't have marginal notes, my Bible doesn't have marginal notes. I have to write this stuff myself. And so this is one to make sure to put the cross-reference there. Psalm 59, look at the superscription, the very top part of the psalm. This is a song of David when Saul sent men to watch his house in order to kill him. And so, if you want a little, this is an insight. This is really cool. Because here's David in his house, and Michal says, when you leave, there's people out there ready to kill you. And we have the psalm that lets us into David's mind so we can know what he was thinking during that time. That's pretty cool. I won't read the whole thing, but just look at it. Verse 1. Deliver me from my enemies, O my God. Protect me from those who rise up against me. Deliver me from those who work evil, and save me from bloodthirsty men. For behold, they lie in wait for my life. Fierce men stir up strife against me. For no transgression or sin of mine, O Lord, for no fault of mine, they run and make ready. Awake, come to meet me, and see, you, Lord God of hosts, are God of Israel, rouse yourself to punish all the nations. Spare none of those who treacherously plot evil. As you read through that psalm, I'm curious what you see, but I'm sure this is written after the fact. Like, it's not as if the house is surrounded and he's about to get killed and he says, bring me some paper so I can write down this psalm. This is after the fact. But what is interesting to me is, here's David in a really bad situation, and his thought is to go to God for salvation. God, save me from this mess. I'll stop here for a second. Other thoughts? Keep rolling. Yeah, Lena?
I was thinking about Saul's reaction and how other people have reacted when they've made the bad decision, when they've done something wrong. You have Adam and Eve in the garden, they're saying, oh, look, they're denying, they're not repentant. Thinking what would have happened if Saul had been repentant versus jealous and hateful in this situation. And David is the good example of how we should act. We should turn to the Lord, but how often are we looking more like Saul than like David, and we're thinking, oh, what can I do to fix this situation? What can I do to make this right? Versus everything I have comes from God, and I should be looking to Him when things are going wrong, not looking inward.
I'm going to say for next Sunday, though, so we look at this. This is not the lesson. This is the text and the foundation. On Sunday morning, I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, write the sermon. What are we going to take away from this? And that needs to be one of our points. But here we are. It's over. David has climbed all the way to the top, and now it's all been taken away. I don't know if you've ever felt anything like that before. I've felt some bad stuff in my life before, but objectively looking at the things that I thought were really bad at the time, it's never all been taken away. Everything is taken away from David here. It's gone. His success, his rise to fame and popularity, his wife, his best friend, it's over. Sitting in the king's house, it's gone at this point. You've got this one thing here, though. I'm going to not read this, but in 18 through 24, I think it's one of those stories where if you read this story, you'll say to yourself, what? What did I just read? Saul sends people, they find out where David is hiding, and he sends people to kill him, but they start to prophesy. And so Saul sends somebody else, and they start to prophesy. And Saul says, fine, I'll go take care of it. And he goes, and he starts to prophesy. And what I think we're reading here is, Jonathan intervened, Michael intervened, and then at this point, even God is stepping in to say, no, you're not going to kill David. So there's that. Not one last thing, but chapter 20 and verse 1. I think this is great. Listen to this. Then David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan. Here, when you read this, be in that spot and hear the tone of his voice. What have I done? I'm running for my life here. What have I done to deserve this? Why is your dad throwing spears at me and putting men outside my window to kill me when I leave my house? Do you feel it like that? Seriously, somebody just tell me what I've done here. Read it. What have I done? What is my guilt? What is my sin before your father that he seeks my life? And this has got to be frustrating. This has got to be a strain on the friendship. Jonathan says, no, David, it's not that bad. And David says, no, it is. And so they put this thing together. It's all of chapter 20. And Jonathan does what David tells him to do. And Jonathan figures out, ooh, it is that bad. And so this is the spot where he says to David, I'm going to shoot an arrow and I'm going to send someone out. And if I tell the boy getting the arrow, go farther, what I'm saying to you is, get out of here. But if I say to the boy, the arrow's closer, come close, you're fine. Everything's fine. And so look down at chapter 20. where is it? At the very end of this section, in verse 41, as soon as the boy had gone, David rose from beside the stone heap and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times, and they kissed one another and wept with one another, David weeping the most. David is out of control. He's there. This is bad. And Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, because we have sworn, both of us, in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord shall be between me and you, and between my offspring and your offspring forever." And he rose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. So, 2 things then. The bell's going to ring in 1 minute. On Sunday, I'll give you a heads up about this on Sunday, but I think it might not be a bad idea to do this now. On Sunday, I'm going to click the button one time, and I want to say, what did we learn from this? This is cool to know, but what are you going to take away from it? That's what I want to know. And I'm glad that it happened like this, because now you have some time to think about it. What are you going to do in this situation? You've got everything, and it's all taken away. As you read through these stories, what are the principles that we're going to take away? I think I got 4 of them listed. I want to hear what yours are first, though. And then, so we're going to learn something from this text. And then when we move into chapter 21, where David is actually running for his life, he's going to make some mistakes. And at this point, I hope that you can see the mistakes that he made, and you could say, yeah, I mean, I kind of understand that. He's running for his life at this point. But ideally, we would say, okay, so the next time I find myself in one of these situations, how will I not make the same mistakes? So that's our next, probably we'll get into, I would read chapter 21 and be ready for that conversation. If you want to disagree with me and say, no, it's okay that David ate the bread of the presence, you might be ready to have that conversation on Sunday, because we might get through the lessons in time to talk about that. All right. Thank you for the conversation tonight. I appreciate it.